Welcome, everyone, to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, Qi Medicine, wherein you'll learn traditional Chinese techniques to activate the healer within you. I'm Lisa Bonis, and I'm really excited to be hosting this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Dr. Roger Jahnke and address questions about his upcoming 7-week course, Qi Medicine, which begins Wednesday, November 28th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Dr. Roger Jahnke is one of the most revered luminaries in the field of mind-body practice, wellness, and integrative medicine. Dr. Jahnke has dedicated his professional life to sharing the powerful ancient healing traditions of China. He's the director and chief instructor of the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi in Santa Barbara, California, and a co-founder of the National Qigong Association. He's the author of several highly regarded books, bestsellers, including The Healer Within and The Healing Promise of Qi. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Dr. Jahnke, who will begin our call by telling us just a little bit about the upcoming course and then leading us in an opening practice. Welcome, Roger. It's great to see you today.
Thank you, Lisa, so much. And thank you, everyone. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity for us to get together and deepen our awareness of our own power. The underlying concept of what we're going to be doing in this course is called the most profound medicine is produced within the human body, by the way, naturally, for no cost. So imagine that there's a healthcare system. It's in you. There's a healthcare system in you. In this course, and of course, in that healthcare system, the medicine is produced within you. So the focus of our time together is to use insights and practices from ancient Chinese medical philosophy, theory, all the way back to shamanic origins and through a long history of thousands of years. This is going to be an amazing experience. And I know that's true because I have taught so many workshops at all of these beautiful retreat centers, Esalen, Omega, Kripalu, the New York Open Center, and so forth, and at many conferences. And the only thing that ever happens is, nobody ever complains. They always say, wow, that was amazing. So my intention is to basically wow you, get your attention, support you in transforming your sense of your own power. And then we're going to practice a lot of Qigong, of course. And to get us started here this morning, or today, I should say, we'll do a little practice. And it's one that we will do again and maybe even again. And it has to do with what's called 3 treasures. 3 treasures, a big focus in Qigong and Chinese medicine. And the concept is that there are 3 treasures: the earth, the sky, and ourselves in between. There's also 3 treasures of the body, the mind, and the spirit. And there are also 3 treasures of what we call the 3 intentful points of focus, or the 3 mindful points of focus: posture, breath, and mind. And so I'm going to ring this gong 3 times. And on the first gong, you can adjust your posture and focus on your body and scan your body. In the second practice, we're going to turn our attention to the breath, deepen the breath. On the third gong, we're going to bring our attention to our mind and awareness. And through those 3 gongs, we will be, it's a kind of meditation. It's a super brief meditation, which is the foundation of all Qigong, all yoga, all Tai Chi, and any of the shamanic or indigenous cultures as they turn their attention to maximizing their capacity. In the Chinese, it would be called maximizing the Qi. And in the case of our time here together, we could use the word capacity or function. Okay, here comes 3 gongs. Posture, lengthen, lift head, drop shoulders, soften your fingers. Breath, deepen the breath. Mind focus. Use your intention to bring your attention inward. Scan the body. Use the mind purposefully. And we're going to take one more deep breath. And during this deep breath, use your consciousness, awareness, or mind in any way that you wish. Do it purposefully. In other words, I, on purpose, turn my attention to adjusting my posture. I, on purpose, turn my attention to an image of my childhood. I, on purpose, turn my attention to the pace of my breath entering and leaving my body. So in other words, one deep breath with a purposeful thought focus. And then just linger there in that peaceful moment. And let's just think to ourselves, what an amazing experience it would be to spend some time on a weekly basis, not only practicing practices that have to do with maximizing function, but also understanding how those practices work, why they were developed, and so much more. Last deep breath. And then we'll turn this back over to Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Roger. That was fantastic. Now we have the rest of our time together to dive into our audience questions for Dr. Roger Jahnke as we prepare for his upcoming course, Qi Medicine, which begins Wednesday, November 28th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about this 7-week course, you can visit qimedicinecourse.com, and we're spelling Qi, Q-I, qimedicinecourse.com to see the full description. So let's go ahead and get started with questions. If you have a question for Roger, go ahead and type it in, and I'll be happy to read it out loud. In the meantime, we've already got some questions that have come in. So let me start with, this one just came in. This is from Linda. She says, when you say that we should scan our body, can you describe exactly what you mean? Is it as simple as just paying attention to what I'm feeling?
Wow, that's perfect. In other words, you actually answered the question. But here's a little bit more context on that, is how often do we pay attention to what we're feeling? And then ask yourself the definition of the word feeling. Is that a sensory process, a mechanism that's like an awareness of a physical sensation? Or is that an emotion? And already we're pretty deep in here because we're now realizing that there are 2 definitions to the word feeling. And so as you turn your attention inward, first of all, you're doing something that most people hardly ever do, purposefully. And second of all, you're already investigating the extent to which the feeling that you're having is a mental emotional feeling or a sensory feeling. And of course, both of those are eligible to be quite insightful in terms of, what's going on in our life and what we're going to do next and how we decide things and the extent to which we, shall we say, focus on feeling in a certain way. So, in other words, I'm feeling upset, but I don't really know that I'm upset. And that's different than I'm upset, and I do know that I'm upset. And that's different than I'm upset, I know that I'm upset, and I know what to do to be less upset. And all of those are a part of what the Chinese call cultivation of Qi, cultivation of the medicine within, or the Qi medicine, and cultivation of awareness, and cultivation of these things, typically using the practice of Qi Gong as a way in, is how Qi medicine operates and how we can heal ourselves using medicine that's produced within our own body because we're allowed to do so. And I'll leave it there, but that was a great question, and I think it was really cool that you answered it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we've got another, this is a great foundational question to start out with here. This is from Carol, who says, what is Qi and what do the words Qi Gong mean?
Great. Excellent. So Qi, and by the way, my background is Chinese medicine. So I've been a doctor of Chinese medicine working clinically from 1977 through 2005. And previous to 1977, I was a student of Chinese medicine for over 10 years. And since 2005, I've been the director of the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. And throughout all of that period of time, I've been to China 10 times and written a couple of books about the things that we're talking about here. And so when I say that Qi is hard to describe, I hope you'll understand that it's not because I haven't been paying attention. It's because it's such a beautiful, deep, rich concept. And if you think to yourself, what are some deep, rich concepts in our own cultural sensitivity? Well, here's one, the word love. What does that mean? Does the word love mean passion and romance? Or does the word love mean devotion? And so, we argue about these things. We argue about how many lives do we have in the history of our being. We argue about the definition of the word universe. So when words are hard to define, those are the most incredible words. Those are the words that really mean something, even though we cannot define them. The extent to which they have meaning is high, very high. And so the fact that the word Qi is hard to define means that it's a big power word that has many interpretations by many people over many, actually in the case of Qi, many millennia, many thousands of years. So then with that said, Qi is often described in the Western world as energy. Well, if you pay any attention to physics, you know that everything is energy, even things. So calling Qi basically everything is one of the definitions. So in a way we can say it's an energy that is pervasive everywhere in the universe, or even what is called the multiverse, that is the multiplicity of universes that it looks like there really are. And so Qi is an energy that's present everywhere in the cosmos, including within ourselves. So then how is Qi, how would we define Qi as a part of ourself? And the answer to that is that when the qi is harmonized and balanced and functioning fully, then we could say that the qi is ample and unobstructed. Ample, meaning there's enough, and unobstructed, meaning that it can do what it needs to do and get to the parts of the body that it needs to get to. So that is the definition of qi for today. And if we were to ask an artist, they would say that qi is the essence of creativity. If we were to ask a weather predictor, that person would say that the qi is the dynamic interaction of a cold front and a warm front, or whatever it is that creates that fresh smell that happens after it rains. A scientist, a chemist would say that qi is what you see, the reaction that you see when you put certain things together in certain ways. So that would be defined as chemical reactions. And, there are, an astronomer would say that the qi is the energy in the universe which holds the celestial bodies in their places, like where's the Earth and where is Mars and Venus and so forth. How does that all stay the way it stays? Well, because there's qi infusing those planets and the universe that those planets are in. The word gong is much easier. That simply means work. So we could say working with qi. But as you know, or as you may know, the work is always defined by what the work is. So if I said, what's your work? And a person says, I'm a plumber. What's your work? I play a violin. So in other words, work doesn't mean anything until it's in a relationship with something else. In the case that we're describing here, the work is working with qi, which is one of the most fascinating, mystifying, and empowering kinds of work in all of the world of any kind of work. So, Lisa, was there two questions or was that just one?
That was pretty much it. Basically, what is qi and what do the words Qigong mean? So I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, that was the best non-definition I've ever heard.
Let me just add one little thing here, and that is that Qigong always ends up being a practice. So if, for instance, the practice is just sitting still, that's called quiescence. If the practice is not sitting still or standing still, then that's called dynamic. And so there's a whole range of practices, Qigong practices, that go from very dynamic with actions. And in our course, we're going to be doing lots of that. There's going to be a practice session with every one of our meetings. And the practice that we just did a few minutes ago was more like a quiescent practice where we're being still and the focus is on internal attention. When we do the physical practices or the dynamic practices, we're not only focusing on the internal, but we're also focusing on the external, move my hands around, sink, rise, adjust, and so forth. Back to you now, Lisa.
All right, great. Thank you. Got lots of great questions here. Let's go to one from Edward, who says, please comment about the emotional and psychological causes for physiological illnesses and diseases, and how do we address and remediate those issues?
Wow, that's a good one. Thank you, Edward. All right, so remember we talked about the three treasures. Three treasures being the one version of the three treasures being the body, mind, and spirit. So in the three treasures concept of Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy, how it works is that the spiritual aspect of being descends into a mental, emotional aspect of being, into a physical and physiological aspect of being. And so the implication is that the consciousness, the middle one, by the way, there's this image on the wall back here, which is called the map of Tai Chi. And the red on the upper side is associated with the spiritual self. The blue at the bottom is associated with the physical, like the earth and the water of the self. And then the Tai Chi symbol in the middle is associated with the consciousness. And so the theory in Chinese medicine is that the body is under the influence of the mental emotional self, and the extent to which health can be depreciated by the influences of the mental emotional self is high. It's also recognized, of course, that when the physical self is comfortable, that the mental emotional self is always more at peace or calm. So there's a relationship between the two. So if you think of yourself for a moment, I am physical, but I am also non-physical to the extent that I have thoughts which don't have physicality. I have emotions which manifest themselves in the physical as distress or pain, but those thoughts themselves do not have a physical component. And so the biggest concept is that we want to develop a relationship with our spiritual nature, because developing a relationship with our spiritual nature gives us access to, hard to describe, but we'll just use the word insight and intuition about our local self. So when I say local self, I mean the local physical self and the local mental emotional self is in some kind of a relationship with a non-local transcendental self. And so in part, what we're wanting to do with Qigong practice is to open a portal to the essence of being. And it's just hard to describe in a few moments, and we'll spend quite a bit of our time in the course investigating that. Now, the last thing that I'll say on this is that the gateway in most people's minds to cultivating self-awareness and developing an association with the essence of self, which I'm reflecting on as a mysterious transcendental aspect of self. The gateway is the body. We think of ourselves as a body. When we are not well, we typically say, my body is not well. Even when we're depressed or anxious, we could say, my head hurts, my neck hurts, I don't have any energy, and all of those are reflections of our self-perception at the level of the body. So the body becomes a sort of like the screen upon which the spirit and the emotional self is projecting. I hope that kind of makes sense. And then that screen is where we read our experience. The body is kind of where we're reading our experience. And then we also use the body in Qigong practice as a way to be able to calm ourselves down enough to be able to actually take on a purposeful relationship with consciousness or with the mind. And so it's the utilization of physical practices because it's hard to do a lot of meditation where we're just sitting all the time. So we use physical practices to calm ourselves down and open an awareness of our mind. So how do you become conscious of the mind? Most people are fairly unconscious of the mind. If you sit down and try to meditate, how many minutes does it take for you to realize that you're just thinking about the things you always think about? And so we want to cultivate a capacity to come into a kind of alignment with these three aspects of self, the body, mind, and spirit. Integration of body, mind, and spirit is sort of like the foundation of Qigong. And then, of course, we bring that to the job, the challenge of maximizing well-being of both the body and the mind.
All right. Wow. Fascinating. And if you're just joining us, we're here with Dr. Roger Jahnke, learning about his upcoming course, again, that's called Qi Medicine, and it begins Wednesday, November 28th. You can log on to qimedicinecourse.com for all the details and to register. Let's go back to questions here. We've got a really good one here from Patricia. This is referring to the conversation you had with Stephen Dinan that aired last week. She says, you talked about how Qi medicine can help us become more sensitive to subtle functional shifts. But what if we're overly sensitive and feel them too much? Can this help to bring balance to oversensitivity?
Yeah, great question. The answer to that is that these practices, utilizing the concept of the three treasures, which was developed by the Chinese thousands of years ago, which are also the basis of yoga and meditation and even more contemporary methodologies like Zumba, let's say, for instance, all of them are going in the direction of harmony and balance. That's what that Tai Chi symbol that I pointed to earlier is all about. It's the basis of Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is based on the concept of harmonizing yin and yang and bringing those two forces, the yang being the invisible force of qi and mind and spirit, and the yin being the physical force of the body, or the substantial force of the body, or the presence of the body. And so, in accord with this general overview, wherein Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy, Qigong, Tai Chi are the methods from the Chinese traditions, are all about going towards balance. So then, when a person has an imbalance, we'll just call it that for right now, that gets our attention, and then we want to do something about it. And so being undersensitive is a challenge, and being oversensitive is a challenge. And both of those challenges are theoretically in accord with the philosophy of the Chinese, going to come under the influence of these practices and these intentions. Now, sometimes people are predisposed to hypersensitivity, and it's kind of like just been there all along. So how will that get solved is a part of what you're asking. And the answer is that by getting, shall we say, gaining a sense of how to manage the three treasures, the body, the mind, and however we manage our relationship with, I don't think you can manage the spirit, but you can develop a relationship with the spirit, which may or may not have been developed in the past. And the combination of these things, the combination of this body focus, breath focus, and mind focus brought to bear on the integration of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of ourself give you the, shall we say, the marvelous potential for a change in the level of well-being. And so, with all that said, I would say the answer is yes, that doing these practices is going to upgrade a level of sensitivity in someone who may be less sensitive than they wish, and it's going to downgrade the level of sensitivity for a person who is hypersensitive.
Okay, thank you. And we've got related questions. There's actually two different people are asking similar questions. One, Avi is asking, how do we know if our chi is blocked? And then Robert is asking, how do you know if your chi is balanced? So maybe this is sort of an extension of what you were just talking about.
Sure, yeah. So let's go ahead with that. There are a lot of states of chi which are complex and really only in the purview of a doctor of Chinese medicine. So I don't want to over complexify this. I would rather oversimplify this so that you have more access. And in the simplified version, which we teach everybody who we ever train as a Tai Chi or Qigong teacher to know this. And in China, everybody who is alive knows this, is that there are two causes for disease. There's a deficiency of qi, and then there is qi stagnation or qi blockage. The most common symptom of qi deficiency is just a lack of energy, a lack of the ability to make your way through the day. The primary symptom that is associated with qi stagnation or qi blockage is discomfort and pain. And so one can very quickly, and we teach everybody that we teach to practice Qigong this, and everybody that we teach to be a teacher to understand this, and that is that if a person is feeling discomfort, that's likely the challenge is likely to be qi stagnation. And if the person is feeling just a general lack of capacity, whether that's energy capacity, metabolic capacity, thought capacity, all of that goes under the qi deficiency feature or component of how Chinese medicine works and how the qi medicine works and how the human body works. So then the question is there a big difference between addressing qi stagnation as opposed to addressing a qi deficiency? And the good news is that mostly no. And we're going to be learning in our class exactly how to approach these challenges. And if it turns out that you end up in the class and you really want to focus on that particular aspect of everything that we're going to be dealing with, we're going to be having discussion sessions and so forth where these kinds of questions can be coming up again. For now, what I'll say is that the practices up to a certain point are always the same. In other words, the practices are the focusing on the body, the breath, and the mind, and coordinating the focus on the body, breath, and mind. And that gives you what the system needs to be able to make the shift, whether it's a deficiency issue or a stagnation issue. And then there are some things that we can do with massage. There are 4 parts of Qigong, and we'll go way into the details on this. We call the 4 baskets of practice: body practice, breath practice, mind practice, and massage practice. And so we can do some things with massage and breath practice, which we'll be learning in the class, to actually turn the Qi medicine in particular directions, whether that direction would be enhancing Qi deficiency or breaking through Qi stagnation. There was one other thought that I had there, and it just flew away, because there's these two concepts, stagnation and deficiency, which we've been talking about. And so let me just leave it there for now.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We've got let's read another pair of questions here because they're similar topics. Holly wants to know, will your course address building kidney Qi for postmenopausal senior women? And Maureen wants to know, can Qigong help with hot flashes?
Yes. So, going back to what we've been saying all along, Qigong helps with everything. I am so biased to all of this stuff. I've spent my entire life on these things. I started practicing yoga earlier than I started practicing Tai Chi, but eventually I ended up in Chinese medicine and so forth. And the underlying foundation, so, underlying and foundation means that this is the rock on which Chinese medicine and all the wellness practices from Chinese medicine sit. The solid foundation upon which all these practices sit is associated with the concept of harmonizing function or maximizing function. So, with both of the challenges that you just asked about, this overview of addressing everything is present. And so what we have to do now is we kind of have to come to the question of, how the heck is that possible? And in the Western world, we suffer from a false assumption. And that is that the diagnostic categories that our physicians have categorized us under are based on the paradigm of Western medicine. And that paradigm is that a part of the body is, in a way, at least clinically, isolated from the rest of the human system. Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and shamanic medicine and the indigenous medicine of every other culture doesn't do that. In other words, the foundation of how medicine works is always based on whole systems. And so if we use the whole system concept as a response to your questions, what we get is that Qigong is good for everything. Now you might think, well, that's ridiculous because that's like a panacea. You're saying that Qigong is a panacea. And in a way I am. And in our culture there's a phrase, there are no panaceas. But the difference is that when we harmonize function, the level of sophistication of these practices, and this is all emerging now in neuroscience and genetic science, and some of the other components like brain, everything about brain plasticity, everything about shifting the neurotransmitter profile within the human system towards a more healing mode as opposed to a depreciating mode. We could say towards a more enhancing mode as opposed to a depreciating mode. There's a level of function in the neurological system that is depreciating, and it has to do with inflammation, oxidation, stress, and so forth. There's also a mode within the human neurological system that's a recovery mode. We call that the parasympathetic as opposed to the sympathetic. And the neurotransmitters which are produced when you are in the parasympathetic mode, are in fact a big part of what we call the medicine within, the healer within, the elixir within. And so what I'm trying to say here, giving some texture around, is the whole concept of the fact that Qigong, in association with other features of lifestyle, so Qigong is a very powerful part of this, but so is rest, so is nourishment, so is hydration, and we will talk about rest and nourishment and hydration as a part of our course, all come together, and then we do the Qigong, which turns on all of these amazing internal functional capacities that science is only recently discovering. Now, how did these ancient people come to understand the functions that we in the Western world have not yet discovered? Well, one of the ways is that they didn't take the human being apart. In the Western world, we learned how the body works by cutting up dead people. In ancient cultures, it is a taboo to cut up a dead person, to see how the person works, because a dead person isn't working. The traditions of ancient medicine in every other culture was based on observing well people and making decisions about what to do next regarding well people, and noticing when well people become less well. And how did that happen? So remember, there were no movie theaters, there were no iPhones, there were the distractions that we have today that make us believe that technology is the answer for everything, were not happening for these people. And so they were paying attention to nature, they were paying attention to themselves and each other, and they were paying attention to the seasons, and they were paying attention to the plants. And we'll probably talk a little bit about herbal medicine in our course. And so they were able to determine how to maximize well-being without using cutting up dead people as the framework for how that happened, and without separating the liver from the kidney, from the heart, from the lung, by looking at the whole person. And so the very, very short answer is that for both of the health challenges that you just mentioned, Qigong and the practices that we will be using are super power tools. Now, are they going to cure a disease that hasn't been cured so far? That can happen. Is that a guarantee? No. And I'll just mention how that works. As a doctor of Chinese medicine in the clinic for 35 years, approximately 35 years, I had the experience of meeting many people who seemed they would be super eligible to get well. And I met many people that I thought were absolutely doomed. And in a percentage of those cases, people that I thought would get well did not. And people who I thought would die did not. And so what is that? How does that work? And what I realized, I called it the destiny factor. I called it the destiny factor, meaning that there was something about this case that you could not calculate using cause and effect. And once we get to the point in our lives where we realize that not everything can be calculated by cause and effect, we actually are on the brink of a kind of wisdom that doesn't exist in the Western world. And so I'm sorry to say that the idea that there are no panaceas is incorrect. And then the idea that there's a guarantee that if you do all these things, that you're going to get well is also not correct. So how do you put that all together? Well, you just have to live the life that you're living and aspire. Aspiration is very powerful. Get inspired, and often getting inspired happens during the practice of Qigong and Tai Chi. And then modify actions based on the wisdom that we develop about our own being. And the yogis and the masters in China would all say that to be able to develop that wisdom, you have to be able to pay attention to your deeper self. And the best way to develop the capacity to pay attention to your deeper self is to practice yoga and Qigong.
Wow, we're just scratching the surface. We have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to answer some questions about the course itself. A lot of people are asking, and I've got those answers for you. Once again, this is going to be just a life-changing 7-week journey under Dr. Jahnke's expert guidance, where you'll experience how the profound medicine is created within you and learn to access it at will to transform anxiety, stress, and disease into self-confidence, inner peace, and optimal health. And the 7-week course takes place on Wednesdays at noon Pacific, starting Wednesday, November 28th. And if you can't join us live, people are asking about this, that's fine. You won't miss the teachings. You will receive audio and video recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. And also, I'd like to remind everyone that the Shift Network offers a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until December 12th in this case to make sure that you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers receives the Qi Medicine Bonus Collection. First, you'll receive a 5-part video training from Dr. Roger Jahnke entitled Qi Gong, Ancient Energetics Roots webinar. Next, you'll get an audio dialogue with Dr. Jahnke and Michael Gelb called How to Ignite and Sustain the Fire of Genius. You'll also receive a $10 discount on a membership with the National Qigong Association. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Wednesday, November 21st, you'll receive this additional bonus gift, and that is a video presentation from Roger entitled Esalen Symposium, Qi, Longevity, and Consciousness. So before we get back into the questions, Roger, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
I think that the thing that I find the most fascinating about this role that I've been playing for all these years is the extent to which average human beings neglect or have for some reason been misinformed about their own power. That is the power, not only of the power for healing, but also the power for self-determination. Now, how often do you find, or has one found, or have you ever met anyone who has acted out that they are in a job that they don't like, in a relationship that they don't like, or is carrying around, I don't like the word grudge, but just the remnants of uncomfortable relationships, or the remnants of expectations that were not fulfilled, and the disappointments that are associated with that. And as we find our way into our sort of essential nature, much is revealed. And the things that are revealed can be read about. We can read these things. There are many of the people on the phone, I myself included, or not on the phone, but on the line here today, have books that we have read that tell us about the wisdom that we could generate regarding our own being. But for whatever reason, we haven't actually had the experience of that. And so this idea of coming to understand the nature of our natural power is just so compelling to me. And in fact, teaching Qigong classes, which is really what we're going to be doing, gives me the opportunity to help, 50 people if they're in a class, or 500 people if they're in the class. So sometimes we have, in classes like this one, we have huge numbers of people. And what do I want to say here? The thing that is the most inspiring to me is teaching people to be teachers. And so I have trained almost 2,000 people as what we call teachers and practice leaders. And so if each of them is out there with a weekly class with 15 people in it, that's 15 times 2,000. And some of the people that we've trained as teachers have 8 or 10 classes a week. So now we're getting up into the big numbers. And for me, I think the sort of the most compelling thing about all of this, turning people onto their power and then transmitting that information through the people that we train to the people that they know and the people that are in their classes. And so for you, the people that are going to be in this class, these practices that we're going to be learning and these concepts that we're going to be investigating, you get to keep that for the rest of your life. I think you get to keep your access to the Shift Network program that you purchase for the rest of your life. But what I'm saying is that the insights and the practices you can use for the rest of your life for no additional cost, and you can even share them with other people, because as you'll see as we get into the practice, these things are not complex. The hardest part is setting aside the time. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting aside 90 minutes every week. So by the time we get through 7 weeks, you will have set aside 90 minutes a week for 7 weeks, which is a way to begin to cultivate the capacity to set aside time for these kinds of practices. Back to you, Lisa.
All right.
Is there anything that I'm leaving out, by the way? Like, you're much more familiar to this. So I should say that one of the things that we'll be doing is having, you mentioned a Facebook page. My intent is that will be a lively Facebook page. And at the end of our sessions, we will have discussion, which will be a lively discussion. And then we're also going to be using what we call breakout rooms. And that gives you the opportunity to be in a little virtual meeting space with a handful of the other attendees to the course to be talking about, anything you want to talk about, but probably to talk about what we're doing in the course, how it's working for you. And part of why we do that is that I not only think, but know that when people talk to each other about these things, it's much more powerful than if they talk to me. Why? Because when you talk to the person who leads the course, you have the impression that you're with someone who knows more than you. That is, in fact, not exactly true. You know a lot that I don't know, and I may know a lot that you don't know. But the net of all the things that we each know is probably pretty even. And so one of my big visions for how this all works is that the people who learn to do the practice, when they talk to each other, they figure out and experience how smart they really are. If you talk to me, I'm always just going to be saying, like, you ask the question, I answer it. When you talk to each other, you ask each other questions, you answer them the best you can, and that's how we develop wisdom, by having conversations. So the ideal for this course is to learn practices and use practices, but it's mostly to be able to demonstrate to you how powerful you are, how smart you are, and how easy it is to share these ideas with others, first in the class, but then with your family, friends, and coworkers.
Sounds perfect. And you actually sort of touched on this while you were talking earlier, so this might be a good time to bring this in. This is more of a philosophical question. Monica says, I love what you're saying, and I can feel the truth in it. What I don't understand is, if this indeed comes naturally to us, Why is it so doggone complicated? How do you suppose we, as a race, drifted so far away from being able to simply heal ourselves without having to take courses on how to do it?
I love that. So, okay, so this may not seem like I'm answering your question, but I think it is the answer. And it goes like this. In our society, we abhor the mystery. Abhor means we don't like it, we hate it, it makes us uncomfortable. As a culture, which includes everything that goes back to the Greeks and the Romans, around the year zero in the Romanized calendar, or what we now call the Common Calendar. In the Western world, which is, we include that to be Europe and America mostly, and that's America after the Europeans, got rid of the Native Americans. But back to that original awareness of nature, which was common to all the indigenous cultures, including the Native Americans and the Druids and the Siberians and the Africans and the Chinese and the Indians and the Hawaiians and, just everybody pre-modern era. They did not abhor the mystery. And so the simple concept of allowing it to be true that you can know yourself, I think is the crux of it. Because in the Western world, we say there are these people, we call them doctors and scientists, and they are solving the mystery. Because when we solve the mystery, everything's going to be perfect. Obviously, we keep solving it, and it keeps arising, and we keep solving it, and it keeps arising, and we keep solving it again, and it keeps arising again. The level of sophistication and subtlety of the fabric of the universe is so subtle that it is possible, maybe, that it will ever be solved, but it's also possible, maybe, that it will not. And it's possible that how we'll solve it is to realize that we are in a more mysterious universe than we can solve with the tools that we have in the universe that we are in. Now, everything about what we're doing in this class is based on the wisdom of the ancients who never thought that you could solve the mystery. In fact, they believed that the mystery is the mother. And a great line from one of the philosophers that we will mention in the course, Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, goes like this, is that the person who's going to succeed the most fully in life is not going to be the person who gained something every day. It will be, in fact, the person who was willing to let something go. And so as we let go of presuppositions, as we let go of assumptions, as we let go of the people that we wish would say they're sorry but never will, as we let go of needing to have the universe be fully understood, to let go of the fact that we need to understand everything before we can go on to the next thing, as we let go of this need to have everything be explained and settle into the fact that there are unexplainable things that are not scary, that are not harmful, that are in fact kind of like the ultimate power, that's when we get to have this feeling of not needing to go to another class. The truth is, when are you, whoever you are, everybody who's on the phone right now or on the line right now, when will be the last class that you ever take? of course, my intention and my hope would be that this will be the last class you'll ever take. But just in a friendly, humorous sort of way, we want to move. This is our time together is really devoted to the idea of developing a set of practices and lifestyle, kind of like a lifestyle framework that is sort of like the end all in lifestyle frameworks. We're going to go to the basics of all the original cultures and look at their idea for how I was going to say solve the problems in our lives, but what I really meant was to align our body, mind, and spirit to the extent that we can understand deeply how powerful we are. And sort of like that's the gold, is reaching a sense of our own power. I think after that, more classes, it becomes useless. Or not useless, but just less useful. We always want to interact with other people. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's a part of what being a human is all about, is learning new things. But essentially, I hope I answered your question. I loved it. It's a super philosophical, and it has a part that we didn't discuss, and I won't discuss it now, but it has to do with the nature of being, which we'll get to later in our 7 sessions.
Right, great. I wish we had more time, because I would love to drill into this whole thing. That's so many things that we could talk about. This has been just a truly enlightening hour. I want to thank our viewers for being with us and for all of your fantastic questions. Qi Medicine starts Wednesday, November 28th. And again, please visit qimedicinecourse.com to learn more and to register. So before we cut you loose, Roger, do you have any final words for our viewers?
Oh, we talked about so much of it, and it's all really just my favorite stuff. Having conversations with interested people about the nature of our lives. And so we will just be continuing. And I guess I'll make like an economic and political statement. If everybody healed themselves, and in the first class, we're going to be talking about the percentage of diseases are preventable, which is high, so meaning we can heal ourselves. So if everybody healed themselves, how much of the $3 trillion every year could we put into schools, the arts, the sciences, the environment? And then, so that's the economics part of it. So now here's the politics. What happens when people know themselves? The answer is that no matter what anybody else says regarding the politics of the day, an individual who knows themselves is never going to be swayed by the hysterical, fear-mongering information that is usually put out by politicians, no matter who they are. And so, to me, this is political, it's economic, it's spiritual, it's social. And to be in a relationship with people like you, in the process of empowering our nation and the nations of the world, and the businesses, and the schools, and the military, the faith-based communities, it's a big vision, I know, but I am super devoted to it, and I'm always thrilled with people who show up in these classes, because we're basically collaborating to be a part of how the world is a better place.
Beautifully put. Thank you again, Dr. Roger Jahnke. It's been an absolute delight speaking with you today. What was that?
Thank you and everyone. Wishing you well.
All right. And for me too, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well. I look forward to having you on this course, or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great day, everyone.